everyone, this is Maregaal Benyako. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or if you are watching by Facebook, hey, welcome to my Facebook wall. And today is Tuesday, April 26, 2022. And today's topic, I want to talk about a few things, but mostly I want to talk about sex and marriage and fornication and adultery and stuff like this in this session here. And what kind of conjured this on is because I'm kind of a fan of a guy named Derek of Myth Vision, and on April 18th, 2022, he had a guest scholar come on. And I'm just going to put quote-unquote scholar there, not to insult her, but it was kind of insulting my intelligence a little bit to watch some of this. I still have not really hardcore gotten through the whole entire video without ripping it apart. I mean, I've listened to it like 8 times, but I was like, it's hard to absorb because I'm like stopped and just listening to whatever I'm listening to. I'm like, dude, she's like totally butchering up our Tanakh, you know. I'm Jewish and I practice Orthodoxy for most of my life, and so Dr. Jennifer Bird was, like I said, the scholar that came on, if I didn't say her name yet. Anyway, she has a master's in divinity, if I heard that right, and a PhD in New Testament and early Christianity. Well, that may not necessarily mean Judaism, biblical Judaism, and so just a little snippet, you know, not to cause waves among the Jewish community, but our Torah was, in my estimation, my studying and things like that, because there's little catchphrases or words, dated type words. I'll give you an example. If someone gave you a book and said, hey man, this book was written in 1522, and while you're reading it, you're like, oh cool, this is great, I'm gonna learn so much of that time frame. Then you're reading it and all of a sudden you read United States of America. Well, you know that book was not written in 1522. It had to come way later. And so the Torah and the Tanakh does this type of thing, especially the Torah, that pinpoints Moses didn't write it. In fact, Yom Kippur, according to Nehemiah, I think 9 through 11, I'm not sure on the verse, I'll put it on the screen here. But they were, when we came out of, but my ancestors, when they were coming out of Persia and Babylon, when Cyrus let us go, when they came back, Ezra and them wanted to know how to do the law, and so they're doing the law. They read it on the first day of the 7th month in the fall or autumn, and they saw that the tabernacle feast, or Sukkot, was coming up on the 15th, and it lasted for 7 days, and you have a special rest day on the 8th day. Well, there's no mention anywhere of Yom Kippur there, you know, but we see, now I get it confused in my head, but I think it's the 24th, but on the 24th of the 7th month, they all of a sudden put on sackcloth and ashes, and so this is the type of Yom Kippur. So this tells you Yom Kippur didn't exist yet. So at this point of Ezra's time frame, or when this book was particularly written, the Torah was not in its current state, what we have now. So it tells you it was written later after that point, because the Torah they had didn't have Yom Kippur in it. And so, anyway, yet the Torah we have has, in Leviticus 16 tells the whole ritual, and in Leviticus 23 and Numbers 29. But you know, we have these catchphrases, you know, like Ramses is mentioned in Exodus, you know, we built Pi Ramses, you know. Nope, that wasn't our town. We were the Hyksos, and we built Avares, and Ramses came later, after we, the Hyksos, were driven out by King Amos in 1522. And so as a memorial and kind of chin up, we're proud. They built the Egyptians built Ramesses right on top of Avares, or snippet of Avares, and off to the side, or encompassed it a little bit. Anyway, blah blah blah. Then in Genesis 36, the kings of Israel are mentioned, and I'm like, what? And so anyway, besides all the Babylonian myths that we adopted while in Babylon, or like the Ark of Noah came to rest on one of the mountains of Urartu. Well, Urartu, this might be all fast, but Urartu, the kingdom of Urartu, only existed somewhere like 860 ish, I think 860 BCE, all the way to 590 when the Medes destroyed, I believe it was the Medes destroyed Urartu. Okay, so if it wasn't the Medes, it was the Syrians, but I think it's the Medes. So anyway, we know, at least I know, I'm not going to BS you or malarkey you around, but the Torah we have was written around 390, and we were polytheistic in the early days. Monotheism started to develop. I'm going to be blaspheming my brothers and maybe Christians, but monotheism didn't exist among us. We were polytheistic. And so monotheism started around, could be the Josiah time. It's hard to say because the redactors and editors of our book and culture just erased so much, and so it's hard to gather some of that. Anyway, so I don't even know what I just said, but anyway, it's hard to gather the truth of our culture, when we were just edited and a lot of things were X'd out. Oh yeah, I was going to say, we don't know when the starting point of monotheism really started, because polytheism was embraced the whole entire time. And so it wasn't until after Babylon, and I would think it was even after Babylon, because we adopted the Babylonian myth, which is full of, no, I forgot to put that in my notes, how Adam and Eve are basically, when Eve was taken out of the side, or so-called rib, that was an adoption of a Babylonian ancient Sumerian myth. And I'll put that on here, but I forgot right now. Elu, or I forgot. I'm not even going to go there. But anyway, but that was adopted too. And so if we're adopting those myths, it seems like we enjoyed them, and then we just made them Judaic with the Judaic names and things like that. Okay, but the poetry is still the same. And so anyway, I had to say that. Why am I saying that? Because when you look into like Genesis, like at the beginning, now Derek and Jennifer fell into this trap, and Derek did it when they were talking about the New Testament. They fell into the trap that it was, they went way back in time. I'm like, you can't go back in time that far back, okay? You have to go to 390, to that time frame. That is the context. Those are the authors, okay? And so, like, another thing they were talking about, about the marriage, they were talking about eunuchs, and Derek didn't buy Jennifer's BS. It seemed to be that way, and he's like, well, you're going to have to show me some resources, but he was saying it more nice, because it's a friend, and I get that, and I appreciate that. But anyway, Derek was like, well, can you give a link, a description where you get these resources from, how eunuchs were not meant to be set apart for the kingdom of God, but up for a good time. Now, back to what I was saying, eunuchs were thought to have a good time, not for those who do the kingdom of God, so it just kind of irked me, but anyway, I'll talk about that, but he was calling her bluff in a nice way.
And then he says, oh, I feel like I need to pull up the passage, because now on the spot I'm forgetting what it says. And then
you can read it if you want to.
Yeah, well, yeah, let me do that.
Okay.
Let me find it real quick here, and then I'm gonna do that and do this, and then do that, and I'm So what he's doing so far in that passage in Matthew 19 is he is rehearsing, as a kind of, if you will, what people are saying back and forth. Is it okay to divorce your woman for any reason? Haven't you heard this? Haven't you heard that? Oh, and then he says, and then I don't know for sure if Jesus introduces the idea or if he's also still, I think he's still rehearsing what the debate says when he says, therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the piece that people focus in on about marriage. Well, what's interesting to me is this passage in Matthew 19 doesn't stop there. And the part that Jesus introduces, the part that is new, the part that is like, all right, this is what you guys, this is the argument, this is the discussion, but here are my thoughts on it. That comes in the next 3, 4, 5 verses. So literally, like people, not just conservatives, even more traditional people, Christians will quote, have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his woman, and the two shall be into one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. The thing is, he goes on to talk about this divorce thing, and if you divorce and remarry, you commit adultery, right? And then he also says, here's the part that's new. He talks about being eunuchs from birth, being made eunuchs by other people, some men making themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. And he says, let anyone accept this who can.
This is in Matthew?
Yeah, this is in Matthew.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Chapter 19. So here's the thing. Jesus, not doing something new, quoting the conversation. What he does that's new is he references eunuchs. And which is, by the way, interesting in and of itself. A eunuch is a castrated man, right? Mm-hmm. The history of the church has said Jesus' reference to a eunuch is a way of talking about celibacy. And this is not correct. Mm. Historically speaking, first century speaking, like Jesus' day.
Right.
People assumed that eunuchs were sexually active. In fact, they were, that's the reputation at least, is they were sexually active with men and women. In fact, eunuchs are thought of as this in-between gender. It's not specifically said that way, but the language used to refer to eunuchs implies that. This male body, but not quite male because he can't bring it in terms of, creating an heir, which is what is important. Mm-hmm. So Jesus is affirming essentially a third gender and saying, let anyone who can handle it do this. Like, that's really interesting, right?
You hurt so many fundamentalist
I did. Yeah. A couple of times. I really enjoy being a biblical scholar. It's that and talking about circumcision. It's kind of fun to do. But yeah.
Oh, man.
Jesus is not a family values guy, people. If he's endorsing castration, he's not a family values guy. How do you have babies? And the thing is, this story is important because men in the early church then did this thing about castrating themselves for the sake of the kingdom. Like, it's not just idle words or idle chatter. People took it seriously, took it to heart. And so it's interesting to me that the history of the church has said, well, he's talking about being celibate. And there are people to this day who will say, see, he's affirming celibacy and this lack of sex. I'm like, actually, he's affirming having a good time, which is fascinating.
And so real quick, just two things, if I may.
Back to you.
Because my critical thinking is like wanting to ask a question.
Good.
So the one question I have is, is there certain sources somewhere that you have that you could reference or even send me afterwards, something I could maybe
send you
a website, a link or something I'll put in the description or in the comment section. Maybe you can add it in the comment section where there's a case made for this eunuch being implied what you're describing here rather than just being complete celibacy. And then number two, if I'm being a total critical thinker here and thinking Matthew comes later and potentially has been, I don't know if Mark has any of this stuff in it, but is this Pauline ideology that has leaked its way into Matthew, or is this possibly actually Jesus? Either way, it doesn't matter. It is affirming an idea or concept here that might be something we're overlooking. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the two things there?
eunuchs were thought to have a good time, not for those who do the kingdom of God. So it just kind of irked me. But anyway, I'll talk about that. But he was calling her bluff in a nice way. And but they fell into the trappings of. Okay, Derek goes like this. What do you think the author of Matthew was talking about? Maybe what evolved by the time he wrote blah blah blah, and it's just like the way I see what he fell into the trappings is like he missed something important he normally thinks of, but he didn't seem to think of at this time, that he was a Gentile author who never knew Jesus, never met Jesus, and he was a Greek. And so he was talking about his stuff, and his time frame, and maybe what the early church was already doing. And so not trying to put a twist on Jesus. Gotta remember, not one single gospel author knew Jesus personally, so you cannot have this like growth process, like if it was a genuine Matthew, and eventually things evolved doctrinally. See what I'm saying? It was a Gentile guy all the way around. So anyway, so let me back way up. So it also says on the show, I looked on the transcript, on the side she speaks and writes about marriage in the Bible, and I was like, oh my God, what's she talking about? Let's delve right in. The very first commandment, I think, that I've discerned, that I've said, I would have to confirm again, just to make sure, but I believe it is. The very first of all commandments of the whole Torah, of the whole entire Torah, is to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? That means, why did the Lord tell Adam that? Because there's only two people there, one pair, husband and wife. Or as if you would read it in the Hebrew, Ish and Isha, the man and the woman. And so, but gotta remember, this is our book, our culture, written at 390, and so it's our time frame and our manipulation and our context. You can't just say, be fruitful and multiply, and what he meant is this: sling your private part anywhere and impregnate anybody just like a wild animal, and doesn't care, and just walk away and produce all these kids and multiply. That's not the context, okay? When you become one flesh, you could be in the crude ways, so like when you have, I don't know, like a plumbing, it's going to be crude. But when you have a male and female end, and then become one pipe, one long pipe, or one plumbing system to do what you want it to do, that's basically the context. You become one flesh, okay? But Judaism, our culture, our context, you are not allowed to have sex outside of marriage. So, when the scriptures teach, be fruitful and multiply, it is commanding you, a man, to go find a wife, and every woman to find a husband. And that is the undercurrent commandment, okay? So you just can't go out and go meet a girl and fornicate and get her pregnant and yay, moved on. I fulfilled the commandment. Now you fulfilled the commandment, be fruitful and multiply. Yes, but you sin by not marrying her, because you are not allowed to have sex with any, as a man, you're not allowed to have sex with any woman before you marry her, okay? And so let's talk about that. So where should we start? Yes, you have to marry her. So when you find a girl, you make a vow with her, an oath, or you swear, that you will, upkeep at least 3 things according to, I think, Exodus 21. It basically requires a man to provide at least 3 things. Sex, of course, is one, the food and clothing. Doesn't necessarily say shelter or anything like that, not money, any of that. And and sometimes in the old culture, even today, there are prearranged marriages where the father or the family picks out a girl for the man, and there's a dowry to be paid, if you want to go that far. Other than that, it's you just pick somebody and you go to the rabbi, or like in Christianity, you go to a priest and you have an official ceremony, and this is going by word of mouth. You have 2 or 3 witnesses because everything's established by 2 or 3 witnesses. I don't believe getting this like Americana. I don't believe in the American state getting involved. Yeah, you can, but it's more like a locking horns document, where like if things don't go well, she gets 50 and you get 50, even though you might have did the 90%. So you see what I'm saying? And so where what you come in with is what you leave with. And so anyway, now things that you did together, that's might be judgment calls on that. Might be 50-50 on that. Like if you did a business together, raised the business together from scratch, like whatever, like making a I don't know, a fan company, yeah, that's, you did it together, it's 50-50, but other than that, it's what you came in with. And so marriage, biblical marriage, is between a free woman. Now you got to remember the context, time frame and context. Slavery existed back then. It's a polygamous culture. In fact, all the cultures of the Middle East were polygamous. Now, to give you a heads up, polygamy was allowed, but not necessarily everybody practiced polygamy. Okay, Isaac and Rebekah is one example that seemed to never practice polygamy. There was no concubine, none of that. So, not that we read anyway. Now I believe Rebekah had a slave girl, but Rebekah never gave the slave girl to Isaac to produce kids and to build up wealth. Like she could have had an extra slave dude and had the dude marry the slave girl, but in all cases, doesn't matter what it is, you have to get married to somebody in order to have sex with them, okay? So if you're a free man, you have to marry a free girl. In order to get a concubine, you have to marry a free girl, because a concubine is the slave of the free girl, a midwife, as you maybe see in a King James or JPS version. And so get this clear, a concubine is your wife's slave and property, okay? And so polygamy is allowed if you can provide those 3 things each and every time. So that is why Solomon, for example, could afford 700 wives, because he was rich, he was wealthy, he got the taxes, and he, blah blah blah, he could afford all that. Now back in around the time the temple was destroyed around 70 AD, if I read right, the high priest married 800 women. Why? Because the men got killed off because of the Romans. And so in order to produce, or have offspring or keep your nation, alive, he had, the women wanted to marry, someone who is equally yoked. And so they gave themselves to the high priest. He had the taxes or the tithe. He could afford it. And so he was able to keep a good majority of Jewish people in existence because of that. And so in Isaiah 4, you can see the lead up to that. There's a great war, you know, where the men die off, and it says 7 women will lay hold of one man, and they basically say, oh, don't even worry about our clothes, don't worry about our food, just give us a kid, or, you know, or sexual whatever, and just let us produce a kid, and blah blah blah, and we're cool with that. And so there's that. Kind of tells you that there is leeway according to what they want to agree with. And it's like, you don't have to, I just love you, you know, I don't care about food and clothes, I can provide my own, whatever. And, you know, it's negotiable. So what do we talk about? You cannot have sex unless you are married, period. And so a free guy and a free girl get married. Doesn't matter how you get married, on your own, arranged marriage, or whatever. And so, blah, blah, blah. And now what are we going to talk about? Concubine I talked about. That is the free woman's maid, servant, or slave, and she wants to produce kids for herself, ownership, or slaves. So she gives the slave girl to the husband, and that is a concubine. And so he produces kids for her. Now, what if there's 2 slaves, a slave guy and a slave girl? They too have to get married, and but it's kind of when his time is up, or she, the owner, like say if it's a girl owner, like the wife, a free woman, if the wife has both male and female, and the free woman wants to make more wealth for herself through slavery, she has to have the dude and the slave girl marry each other. Then if she wants to set that guy free, they are basically automatically divorced, unless he wants to be a permanent slave. Okay, and that's where you put the spike, you know, through the ear, you know, tack him to the doorpost as kind of symbolism. You are now for a slave, eternal slave of this household. So it's kind of symbolism. You just go, you know, tack it to the doorpost back there, and so that's symbolism for that. And so, but if he doesn't want to stay married, then it's an automatic divorce at that moment. And so, now here's where other things get involved. In the 10 Commandments, you have read, you must, not shall, you must not commit adultery. Okay? What is adultery? Adultery is, a lot of people say, I know what adultery is. You may not know, according to Judaism and the biblical text and the culture and the context, okay? Adultery is strictly 100% based on the status of the woman. It has nothing to do with the guy. Why? Because polygamy is allowed in our culture, if you could afford it. So, adultery is strictly based on the status of the woman, because she is only allowed to be married to one guy, where guys could be married to multiple women. So, fornication and adultery are not the same thing. See, you cannot put American culture on the biblical text. So, say like in America, like a lot of people don't really care now as far as law goes. You know, depending on what the law wants to dictate or what the spouses want to say, but nonetheless, to make a point, if I'm married and if I fool around with a single girl here in America, though I'm married, I commit adultery. That's American culture, not Jewish culture, okay? I think I said that right. Yeah, if she's single. So, but in biblical culture, biblical Judaism in our culture, that is only fornication. It's not a death penalty, okay? And I am obligated to marry that girl. And so, and if she is a virgin girl, like I deflowered her, versus someone who's divorced, a widow, whatever like that, if it's a virgin girl, the dad could say, oh no, he couldn't step in, okay? And say no. And then I would have to pay a dowry price or whatever that price is at, you know. Now, if I rape a virgin girl who's never been with anybody, her dad cannot say anything, cannot step in, can't say no. According to the biblical text, she has to marry me, and that's kind of a lame deal, you know. That's kind of a one I don't agree with, but that's nonetheless that's what it says. He cannot put her away all the days of his life. So it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it was just the writers of the law were just like thinking, you know, I'm going against the rabbis here, where God gave this law to Moshe, you know. Yeah, I have to back that up there. I mean, back up from that. But when the men wrote this law, they're just thinking, they weren't thinking about the girl. She's gonna be tied to a dude who raped her, you know, had sex with her without her permission, you know, did by force or assault and battery. So that ain't right. But anyway, so yeah, if you rape a virgin girl, the law is they have to get married, no questions about it. So, but however, if now it does not talk about, so I cannot really say, but if I were to judge, it'd be a different story. So if you were to be with one who is not a virgin, whether you commit a fornication, then it's not exactly the same. It might be left in the air. Hey, do you want to? You're not allowed to fornicate, but you're not, you know, but you may not be obligated to marry that person either. So, and you might get whipped in the back for it. You know, that'd probably be one of the offenses. You need to stop that, because fornication and sexual stuff is not allowed outside of marriage. So now let's get back to it. So like I said, marriage is strictly based on the status of a woman. So now if the woman is married and she goes with a single dude, both of those guys get, you know, the married woman and the single guy get stoned to death. That's the way it is, because that is considered adultery. It's based on the status of the woman. Why? Again, a woman is only allowed to be married to one person. However, a man can be married to multiple women. So, like I said, marriage or adultery is strictly based on the status of the woman. Is she married or not married? And so, and again, like, if now, like, here's another law. I'm not sure where it's at, if it's in, this is Leviticus 19, I believe. If a slave girl is betrothed, it doesn't give like high detail, it just says betrothed. You know, whether she's betrothed to a free guy, it seems to be, in my opinion, it seems to be talking about a free dude, but one who's not a slave. But it doesn't say, so, but I'm leaning that way, but because it doesn't say. It says if she's betrothed and another guy sleeps with her while she's still a slave, whether it's a slave guy or if it's a free guy, it's not a death penalty, because she was not given her freedom yet. And so during the slave period, she could still produce kids for the owner. She's not her own property, okay, per se. And so, however, if she is free on her own and she is betrothed and she gets seduced by some dude, and she's a virgin, of course, and she sleeps with this other guy. The guy, no one's married here, but it's betrothed. It's still considered marriage by vow and oath and things like that. That's how strong the word is to them, the spoken word. Not scripture, just the promise, the vows, the oath. So if a betrothed girl sleeps with a married guy or a single guy, not her guy, as they both get stoned to death. See what I'm saying? So anyway, what else I want to talk about? So I talked about, what else? Let's see. So fornication, I did talk about that just now. Fornication is strictly is sex outside of marriage, and depends on the context, of what, make sure it's fornication and not adultery, because there's a big difference. And adultery, like I said, adultery is strictly 100% based on the status of the woman. So, like I said, if a single girl goes with a married dude in America, that's adultery. But in Judaism and biblical culture, no, that's simply fornication. And so it's not allowed, but he has to marry that girl. And so, what else? Now, we could talk about more intimate. One is masturbation and wet dreams. You have to talk about it. Simply have to talk about it. Why? Is because when semen comes out of a man, he becomes instantaneously unclean until evening. He has to wash when the sun is going down, and after sunset he becomes clean, okay? And so in Leviticus 15, is it 15? Yeah, I think it's 15. Might be verse 19. Let me look real quick. I said Leviticus 15, and just make sure. 15, 16. I was close. Anyway, it goes like this. And if any man's seed of copulation go out from him, then he shall... See, it doesn't say context. Just period. Just point blank. Doesn't say how. So it says, and if any man's seed of copulation go out from him, then he shall wash his flesh in water and be unclean until evening. And every garment and every skin wherein is the seed of copulation shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. That's all it says. There's no woman involved in those two verses there. Again, that was Leviticus 15, verse 16 and 17. Now, when you go to 18, it says similar stuff, but now the woman is involved, okay? And so here it goes like this. The woman also with whom the man shall lie with seed of copulation. Okay, let me read that again. The woman also with whom man shall lie with seed of copulation, they shall both bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening. And so you see the difference. One is having sex with your wife, or a concubine, or the slave girl, which is a wife. It's a unique type of wife. You're both slaves. But so one is by yourself, the other one is with a wife, and so that's kind of a sexual thing. But there's another thing here. Okay, in the 10 Commandments, or the 10 sayings, in one of the commandments it says, thou shalt not commit adultery with your neighbor's wife, period. Okay, we know what that is. She is a married woman. She's untouchable. Don't touch her. Don't come near her. And now, you go to saying number 10, thou shalt not covet. Okay, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife, it says in there. Now, I'm going to be very, very precise here. For a reason, it might sound funny, but it does not say, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's daughter. Why do I say that? Because context of what I'm saying, not necessarily the script is saying, because the daughter could be like 50 years old. Okay, but context of what I'm saying, she's like in her 20s, 19 years old, whatever, you know, above the age of marriage. You know, it does not say, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's single daughter. It doesn't say that. It says, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. And there's a big difference there. Because why? Because she's under the oath, the vow, the swearing, you know, like raised up hand, swearing. So you cannot touch the wife, but you can covet in a kosher way the daughter. Any single girl you could covet. You're allowed to do that. And a single girl could covet any single man, or any married man for that matter, in Judaism. And in America, no, only single men. But so anyway, so because like I said, polygamy is allowed. So now when it comes to other stuff, you know, you cannot fantasize like, okay, when you see a pretty woman walking down the street, it is better for you to never covet any woman on the street, at least until you know who she is. If she has a ring, you know, pick her off, you know, right from the get-go. Oh, she's married, I can't covet her at all. You know, I'm not allowed. Ooh, can't do that. But you know, but you see a young girl, you know, she's single because you already know her. You can covet her all day long, you know, all day long. No sin in that, okay? And because, like the scripture says, you have to be fruitful and multiply. And the context of being fruitful and multiply is to be married first. That is the context of our culture. You cannot be sexually active with anybody unless you are married. Now, I want to talk about what Jennifer was saying, because what I'm saying now, she butchered up in a lot of things. You know, she was talking about, that's not talk, you know, like, I got some notes here. One is, be fruitful and multiply in Genesis 1:22. That's not talking about marriage. It's talking about making babies. You know, I'm like, yeah. But the context of our culture is you have to be married first. So it's what's the S word? I forgot. It's synonymous with marriage. You know, sex and making kids, being fruitful and multiply is synonymous with marriage. You cannot do that unless you are married. Because if you're just going to take one little snippet out of the Torah and run with it, oh yeah, I gotta fleek my diggling, you know, and have some babies. You're being liberal, dude. You're being, I'm a liberal, I'm a sexual deviant, whatever. Can't do that, dude. You gotta be kosher. Okay, and I'm just going to touch on this because she touched on it, and it was just so stupid to me. You know, as a Jewish guy, it just insulted my intelligence, okay? And she goes something to the effect, I'll probably quote it and put it in the box right here, like so you could actually see her saying it. But she quotes like Genesis 29, and she doesn't quote it, she just kind of touches on it, you know, paraphrases it, talks about it. Talks about, well, there, not to mock with that voice, but I'm just saying, well, there, you know, he says for us to be vegan, but nobody wants to talk about that. I'm like, really, dude? You just took that snippet and ran with it?
They're talking about Genesis 1:28, and they're actually only talking about the first half of the verse, which says, be fruitful and multiply. God said that to the people, right? In the first creation story in Genesis 1, right? The sixth day, he created all the land animals, and then he creates humans. And says, go be fruitful and multiply, and cuts off right there, right? And we don't talk about the fact that he then goes on to say we should also be vegans. You know, like people don't want to talk about that. So be fruitful and multiply.
Didn't read any of the context, anything else? Okay, what's the context? I mean, live with the mythologies a little bit. I mean, I know they're not true, but nonetheless, you know, I'm sorry to blaspheme the rabbis here, but we have to go with the theology here, you know, of everything else that's in the book, you know, especially right in Genesis itself, chapters apart, okay? What is the context? when he made humans, he made a male and a female, two individuals, okay? Adam and Eve. That was it. Saying, looking at the context of Noah and the animals that came on, there's one pair of each, depending on whether it's clean or unclean. Another text says 7 of each. I think that's for the clean animals, but nonetheless, the theology, the read between the lines, but not too much reading between the lines because it's kind of supported with the other verses. He only made one pair of every single species on earth. So whatever variety of cows, now granted this is the context is 390 BCE. It's not legit from way millions of years ago and dinosaurs and all that. I don't care about all that. Dinosaurs were dead. No one knew about them, especially from people at 390 BCE, okay? There might be a little bit of oral law, about some dragon or something because they came across a skeleton and said, oh my God, look at how big this beast is with a skull like this big, and teeth like this. So that must be some dragon. And so anyway, you can't go that far, okay? So it's just the context of what they knew at that time. Now, these are superstitious people. You gotta remember that. And so I forgot what I was saying. Oh, okay, so he only made one pair of each species. Doesn't matter, like all the cow species, like there's a, I don't know, Jersey cow, whatever cow, Angus to whatever. How many there are. Or like the goats, the Nubian goat, the boar goat, the briar goat, whatever, how many there are, which are many, from deer to antelope to, pronghorns, the elk, the moose, to whatever even existed then that they saw, the ibex, the gazelle, the addax, the whatever, all the different cats, like the snow leopard, the normal leopard, the panther, the cougar. I'm talking about black panthers. And the cougars and saber-toothed tigers and whatever. And now I don't know if saber-toothed tigers existed by the time 390. They died out 10,000 BCE, so I'll have to erase that. But nonetheless, tigers and whatever cats that might be around. So the context is he only made one species of each. There's only 2. So this is why he told not just humans, he told animals too to be vegetarian. So don't be you have to be vegetarian. So she's thinking, oh, we don't want to talk about that because she's promoting by her goofy statement that God is promoting vegetarianism. No, he's not. He's promoting it for that time according to the theology, mythology, and the superstition. Why? Because he only made one species of each. Now, here's the rebuttal and pushback. Okay? By the time Adam and Eve sinned, there was enough of one particular species where the Lord killed some of them to make garments of skin for Adam and Eve, okay? And also, by the time Abel came around, when he gave the first fruits from his so-called flock, there was enough of that species to go around, so he was able to afford to kill some without making the species go extinct. Same with the Lord, when he killed some to make garments of skin. He was able to afford to kill some off without making them go extinct. See what I'm saying there? That's between the lines there. You have to see, because it's right there. He made garments of skin, and Abel killed some, and it pleased the Lord. Didn't irritate the Lord. It pleased the Lord. And so the Lord had favor to Abel's sacrifice versus Cain's. What was the difference between Cain's? Why did he get in trouble? It's not because it's not because it was more produce. There's no meat involved. It doesn't say first fruits in there at all. That's one particular word that you don't find in there. It's like it just said he brought of his field per se. something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but it does not, where Abel precisely says the first fruits of his flock or the firstborn, something like that, where Cain didn't do any first of nothing, like the best of his deal. As you know, in Jewish law, when it comes to the temple, you bring your first fruits, like the first of the barley, the feast of unleavened bread, Chag Matzah. You bring your barley, and at that time, then you bring your wheat. So it has nothing, or at the end of the year, the harvest festival, bring all your, your olives, your grapes, and things like that. And so you're bringing in things of the field, not meat. And so there's not a problem with that. But it seems to be saying, I'm reading between the lines there, but it seems to be saying he was mad. The Lord was upset, I should say, because he didn't bring the best of the first fruits, and the best. Simply because it's the first stuff, you don't want to give the Lord junk either, like rotted and yucky and things like, well, I'm not going to eat that anyway, so I'll just give it to the Lord. And there's a big sin against that in the prophets, I believe, giving the Lord junk. And so he doesn't want to do junk. He wants the best because he deserves the best. So she is wrong with the veganism. And point blank, and what do you do with Passover and all the sacrifices? And the Lord was pleased with Abel's sacrifice. Come on. Or the Lord himself killed animals to make garments of skin. So come on, give me a break. So now she was wrong in something else, which totally blasphemed my ears. I couldn't even believe it. She read it herself right there on the screen. You can see her like, like this, and reads Matthew 19. Now I'm going to have to read it just to see. Now Matthew 19 in the King James is messed up, and in the Greek it might be messed up. I'm not a Greek guy, and I don't want to look it up, and I don't really care. So, but I'm going to tell you the difference, at least in the English, okay? Because we just went through marriage, adultery, fornication, concubines, and things like that, okay? And polytheism. Now this is really going to throw you off. Not polytheism, polygamy. So when you read 19, you're going to say, dude, if this guy's an Orthodox Jew, he's butchering up his own Torah here. And let's see what it says. Matthew 19. You can turn to it now. I'm going to use the King James Bible. I can't say it's part of the JPS because we don't have the New Testament. But I'm going to put these on, make it a little bit better. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Now read it real clear because she's like skips right over this. And this is why I say, God, is she really a doctor? I mean, give me a break. A PhD in New Testament, early Christianity, speaks and writes about marriage in the Bible. I'm like, dude, you're so far off, it's ridiculous, it seems like. All right. Let's read it. Verse 19, starting in verse 3, there's a paragraph symbol there. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for any cause whatsoever? In biblical Judaism, you can't do that. There's three things right there. Sex, food, and clothes. That's on the woman's side, and the woman has to do her part too, you know what I mean? And so, and because polygamy is allowed, let's say, for example, her womb gets closed, like Rachel. Rachel's a perfect example. She had Benjamin and Joseph, and Joseph first, then Benjamin. Anyway, it took her years and years and years and years and years, according to the mythology, to finally conceive. And before that, she gave the concubine to Jacob, and her slave to Jacob to be a concubine to produce kids for her. And same thing with Leah. She produced kids, like 6 of them right away, but then she stopped. And so, or something like that, or mixed match. She had 4, then concubine, then she had some more, or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, she gave her, Leah gave her slave to Jacob as well, and to be his concubine. But what was I going to say? So remember, polygamy is allowed. So let's keep that in mind, okay? And no, you can't just get a divorce. Oh, also, I didn't say this. I got to say 3 things. Okay. Let's say adultery was committed. Now, I said adultery is strictly based on the status of the woman. Okay? Whether, like, let's just use me. Like, I'm the main dude. Okay? If I sleep with a single girl, doesn't matter if I'm married or not, because polygamy is allowed. If I sleep with a single girl, it's only fornication. Only fornication. It's not a death penalty. If I sleep with a married girl, oh, we're both in trouble. We're both knocked out. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, if someone catches us, because it's only based on 2 or more witnesses. Now, if there's only 1 witness, guess what? You can't put us to death. Just can't. Not enough witnesses, because the witness might be lying, whatever. But there's other 2 things that are true, but you still can't put them to death because you don't have the witnesses there. Okay, and this is it. In Numbers 5, if a man, like say I'm married, and I suspect my wife to be fooling around, but I can't prove it, but her demeanor is different, don't want to be with me anymore. She talks about a dude all the time, like she smiles and talks, and there's stars in her eyes, so you're like, okay, something's going on. And she has to go to a grocery store for some odd reason, or someplace, for no reason. So you suspect it. So you drag her to the priest, like in Numbers 5, and he makes her drink some bitter water, writes a curse out and blots it with water, makes her drink the bitter water that was from, that has dust from the temple floor or the tabernacle floor. And if her belly swells and her thigh begins to rot, she's guilty of adultery. However, because there's no witnesses, you have to let her go. However, there's a law there. And it's a roundabout way, zigzagging. This is the evil, I guess you could say. Not an evil, but the nuisance, or the lacks of it, of the Torah, of everything's not written, because you can't just throw every scenario life throws at you, but you could glean a law out of another law, okay? What is it? What am I talking about? Okay, here it is. If you give your wife, this is where you glean something. If you give your wife a bill of divorce and she goes away, blah, 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 and she becomes married to some other dude, and they last a long time, like 5, even if it's just one day, Well, just make that point, though, okay? There's a certain point I need to make. Not just married, because something might happen on the way to the marriage bed, so like a car accident or something, and like to the honeymoon suite. So let's just go with my scenario. So let's say she marries a new guy, and over a period of time, whether 20 days to 10 years down the road, he's like, I'm done, because she wasn't put out anymore, or whatever, because I don't want, because you have to support her. He's like, I'm done. Here's your bill of divorce, and get out of here. Well, the first husband is not allowed to marry that girl, the original girl, because why? defiled is not necessarily maybe a proper word. It's more as penetrating. She had sex with some other dude. And so it is not allowed for the original guy, because of that, to go back to her. Because once she has sex with someone else, he's automatically forever out. So, going back now to the adultery, if you are caught by the priest, through the divination, you cannot be with that lady anymore. You can't be with your wife anymore, because it's been clear by the divination that she slept around, and you cannot be with a woman again if she's been with another guy in the between. Can't do that. And so the other one is like King David, okay? King David got caught by Nathan or Gad, and I believe it was Nathan, about Bathsheba. And so Bathsheba could not be with Uriah. Did I say that right? I'm tired. Anyway, so when Bathsheba, now granted, I'm dipping into the old-timey days of David, when polytheism, not polygamy, but polytheism existed, okay? And there might be a difference, because what we have today is in the monotheism time, and the new law and things like that, so it's hard to say what is what back then. But let's just go with the monotheism for a minute, okay? And go with it. He was beloved in the Lord's sight, after his heart, and so forth and so forth. So if she's with Uriah and married, and David sleeps with her, that's a capital offense crime. However, because they committed adultery, because it's based on the status of the woman. And so if they were caught red-handed, that was adultery. They'd both be put to death. However, Nathan, according to the story, seems like only Nathan knew about it. Now the guards or whoever called her up don't know what's going on. We don't know how big his palace are. It doesn't give that details. People standing outside the door, and they heard stuff. Doesn't say that at all, okay? So you can't read too much in the line, so let's just keep it vague as it's kind of vague. So Nathan, or Gad, but I think it's Nathan, tells David about this parable about the sheep and blah blah blah, or the only lamb, and so Nathan tells him, I know about your adultery. However, there's, but the truth of, according to the scripture, there was no witnesses to it. So, and only Nathan knows about it. So there's not enough witnesses, so you can't do anything. Now, according to the law, Uriah didn't know anything about it. But he was killed before he knew anything about it. But he was not allowed to be with Bathsheba again. Okay? After that, because she had sex with David. And so she couldn't go back. She can't play the ping pong. And so, say Uriah came from the battle and slept with his wife. Well, David could not be with Bathsheba ever again after that. So it's only once you're with somebody, that's it. If you get a divorce, it's fine to get a divorce for legal reasons. If you get a divorce and she never touches a guy, never sleeps with a guy, you can marry her again. At that point, you can, yes. But if she gets involved with any other guy, fornication, adultery, doesn't matter, you can't be with her again. So there you have it. So let's keep that in mind. There's those are loopholes, okay? But you have to glean some laws out of other laws. So let's go back to what we're saying. We didn't get far, did we, at all? Anyway, he answered, is it? Well, let me go back. Verse 3, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for any cause? No, not just for any cause, no. And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his woman. She got that right, Jennifer said woman there. It was correct. She messes something up there. I don't know what it is. I couldn't remember. I can't remember right now, but gotta remember there's a play on words going on with Genesis. Anyway, with Genesis, because Adam is named after the ground, which is Adamah. And so Adam, the man, came out of the Adamah, so he was given, his name was Adam, or man was Adam. And Ish is man, and Isha is woman. Okay? So there's a play on words which she may not pick up in the Hebrew, or she may not ever read the Hebrew. I don't know. But yeah, it's, the Ish and Isha shall become one flesh. So there's kind of a play on words and stuff. Kind of like, Abraham and Sarah laughed, because they're old, and so Isaac's name is Laughter, blah, blah, blah. There's a play on words there. So you have a lot of play on words in the biblical text in Hebrew. So anyway, I had to throw that in there. Okay. And shall cleave, verse 5 of 19, and said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his woman, or wife, and they twine who shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twine or two, but one flesh, or couple. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Then, verse 7, they say unto him, Why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement, and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. See, this is the big screw up right here. This is maybe a Gentile talking, Matthew, whoever the author of Matthew, it's a Gentile gospel writer and does not know our text and, our theology. Look, every single law, every single one of them. It said we have 613. Of course, I count more, but I didn't thin out the ones that are duplicated, so it might be 613. I got like 940-ish, somewhere around there. Anyway, the Torah was all 100% given by El and El alone on Mount Sinai, or in the desert leading up to Sinai, or in the desert after Sinai, okay? Or on Moses' last day of living. That's the myth, the legend, and the superstition, okay? You have to believe that. That's it, because he was a prophet. He heard. It might not be the fire and smoke on the mountaintop he got everything, because you see the manna laws were in the wilderness going up to Sinai, okay? So not all of them were at Sinai, but over the 40 years in the desert, okay? So what was I going to say? Yeah, he says right here, because of your hardness of heart. That is why I'm pointing out. No, that is where that's wrong. That is wrong. This is where the Gentiles talking. No, there's Orthodox guys going to say that. He's going to have the mindset, this is God's law. We don't bend it. We don't corrupt it. We don't give negative opinions of it. That's what he said. That's what you do, and blah, blah, blah. So there might be a Greek influence of the Greek author talking this junk, and maybe the Greek philosophy and the Greek influence, whatever, because he was a Greek. He didn't know Jewish ways, Yes, Matthew seems to be a Torah-observant Gentile, whoever he is, because he's the most Judaic. He has laws everywhere. In Matthew 7, he seems to be anti-Paul, blah, blah, blah. But so, not because of the hardness of your heart. But let's move on. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever put away his wife except for be to fornication. Now, it seems like this so-called scholar, PhD, Dr. Jennifer Bird, misses this point. I mean, at least in the video we have, she doesn't mention it. I mean, she just, if she says it, I think she might say it, but she don't like hone in on it. Like she just skips over it like it didn't get recorded at all in her head. It says, let's read it again. It says, and I say unto you, verse 9, whosoever shall put away his wife except it be for fornication. Now that word fornication, I just was very explicit. Fornication is the wrong word. It is probably better in this text right here for sexual extramarital affair. Be another word, but basically, yeah, that'd probably be better. I say unto you, whosoever put his wife except for extramarital affairs, that'd be good, and shall marry another, committeth adultery, and whoever marrieth her which is put away doeth commit adultery. Okay, this is where it's kind of corrupt. There might be, now Derek was kind of correct here. I mean, he's pretty freaking correct here to a point, because he was mentioning to a point like, and then he kind of goes off thinking Matthew was written, it seems like he's leaning, like he forgets, like Matthew is written by a Greek guy who never knew Jesus, never met Jesus, and he, versus blah, blah, blah. And so he kind of falls into the trap. This guy knew Jesus. It seems to come across that way. I can't guarantee you'd have to ask him. So, no sin on him, but it just seems to be that way. But, he, like, this is the Matthew guy who knew Jesus, but he's writing after maybe years gone by, and he's now more influenced after the temple was destroyed, because we know that Matthew was written after the temple. So, but he seemed to fell into the trap of, this is Matthew, and he knew Jesus, and he's quoting Jesus for this actual teaching, where you gotta remember, Matthew never knew Jesus, never heard his teaching, don't know jack anything. so let's go back. I want to talk about that. Marital unfaithfulness. Is that what I'm trying? Marital unfaithfulness. That's what I was trying to find. I guess it wasn't I guess, except for marital unfaithfulness. That's what it is, what I'm trying to find. But I say unto you, whoever shall, just change the word from fornication, okay? And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife except for marital unfaithfulness, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. Now, there's no sin in Jewish culture in Jesus' day, and for a Jew to go against polygamy, point blank, because that is our culture. Polygamy is our culture. Many people had many wives back then, okay? Not everybody. A lot of people didn't probably agree with it, didn't want the headache and the drama and whatever. I get all that. And but a married guy could marry any single girl he wants if he could afford it, according to those three standards, okay? So that part is wrong. The fornication is wrong. It has to be marital unfaithfulness. Now let's move on. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doeth commit adultery. Now that part is 100% correct. Why is that correct? Because Jesus is saying, if you do not get divorced, over marital unfaithfulness, or those other three things I'm talking about, and you give her a bill of divorce, and it's not done in the God way, the legal way, for legitimate reasons, she is still biblically married to you in the sight of God. Okay? And so, when you give her a bill of divorce and she thinks she's divorced, and the new guy comes around and thinks she's divorced, they feel free to get married to each other. They commit adultery in God's eyes. So he's saying that right there. Okay? That is correct. You cannot get a divorce just for a random, you suck. You know? You can't do that. You have to, before you get married to somebody, you have to judge them up and down. Or if it's a prearranged deal, the family has to, judge the girl up and down. If she, this type of person, that person, a jerk or whatever, a user, a gold digger to whatever, this and that, a lousy cook, can't have kids, she can't produce, doesn't have her menstrual cycle, there's something going on. Yeah, you have to judge all that, all of it. So, same with her family. You got crushed testicles, I want kids, and grandkids. You have to judge the guy too. Same thing. He may be infertile. So, all right, now let's go on. So, and this is kind of, there might be a ring of truth to this, okay? That Jesus actually said that to a certain degree, because it's true. You cannot put away a wife unless it's for marital unfaithfulness. Marital unfaithfulness could be the other thing too. The sexual stuff, but you could divorce, in my judgment, you could divorce your wife if, like, say, years go by, like, say, Rachel, and she can't produce kids, but Jacob loved Rachel, so there's a big difference there. But if he got fed up with her, he had a legitimate reason. He couldn't produce kids, and he may not want the drama of another lady. I'm just saying it's somebody else, so you may not want a concubine, a second wife, and all that drama between two women fighting, so he has a legitimate reason to divorce the wife, but those are under certain circumstances, not just say, you didn't go to movies with me, here's a bill of divorce, man, I'm sick of you. Well, I just won the lottery and I don't want to share, so get out of here. So, now you can't do that. So, alright. What else? Verse 10, his disciples say unto him, if the case be, all right, let's try again. Verse 10, his disciples say unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. Okay, now, what just was said? They are now talking about being single, okay? That is the context. Now, this so-called, I'm going to say it, I'm going to be rude, I have to be rude. This so-called doctor, Jennifer Bird, seems to miss that. She went right over it. It's like it seemed to go right over her. I said it seemed, because it doesn't seem to be discussed at all. It says, so the context of what's about to be said is now they're single, and pretending to be single, okay, not to be married at all. And so Jesus kind of feeds off of that, okay. So let's go. His disciples say unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to be married, or married, to marry. But he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. Now let's listen really close, because now she's about to talk about eunuchs, and she just blasphemes my ears on this one. For there are some eunuchs, he just delves right in, doesn't even talk about just being normal single, he just delves right into being a eunuch. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. And there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Okay? And this is what he is mostly dwelling on right here. That part. Well, she seems to skip over because she says, well, eunuchs doesn't mean, the church has said always be celibate. Yeah, because that's what it freaking teaches right there, dude. I mean, come on, pull your head out of your thing. And so, and it says, which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So it's basically the ultimate calling, okay? To castrate yourself, to knock out that high level of testosterone so the desire is far less, so it's easier to overcome because you're, yes, and she is correct in one part. Yes, eunuchs can still get aroused, erected, but this is where she really makes a blaspheming statement. In Judaism culture, in Israeli culture, according to the faith, okay, you are of Judaism. It doesn't matter if you're back then or now. It doesn't matter if you're 390 or 1,000 years from now. Judaism does not teach you can sleep around before marriage, okay? You have to be married, like I said with the Genesis one. Be fruitful and multiply. She makes it sound like it's talking about offspring and kids producing babies, not marriage. But a lot of people in the church thinks it's one and the same. I'm like, you ding-a-ling, our scripture teaches you have to get married first before you could even have sex, so it's synonymous with marriage, okay? Get it through your head, man. You have to say that. I mean, you have to be rude with some folks. I mean, you just have to. And so she is like saying, blah, blah, blah. Jesus, and then she goes on, well, eunuchs, at the time, it doesn't say it outright, but it kind of leans that way. Jesus, eunuchs were considered like this. I don't know if she used the word bi there, but bi is not a guy because he can't really produce. He doesn't have the testicles, but he's not a girl. He's kind of like bi. So is Jesus producing bi? Really? Bi trans? I mean, not trans, but bi gender? I'm like, really, dude? You just went there. Am I listening to a woke liberal person trying to promote her hogwash on an ancient text? Yeah, homosexuality was a real deal, especially among the Greeks. And a Greek guy was writing this book. However, we're talking about Judaism here. Homosexuality was a capital offense. We all know this dude is a dude, so homosexuality is a capital offense. Adultery is a capital offense. Fornication in some regards is a high capital offense, so, here's an example of a capital offense. Okay, if a girl sleeps with a guy, no one finds out, they keep it under wraps, they together secretly, and so she obviously loses her virginity, and then over time a guy finds her, is interested in her, and they became in love with each other, and they want to get married. But she keeps the virgin stuff, like her non-virgin ways, under wraps. No one knows about it except for the guy and her, the original guy. And so everybody assumes she's a virgin. And so here's a dude marries her, and the guy says, I married this woman, and I thought she was a virgin, but there's no tokens of her virginity anywhere. And so whatever this cloth is, whatever, and the parents can't prove she's a virgin, because there's just a lost tradition, just lost. So I don't know what that is. I honestly don't. I can't find it anywhere without some goofy commentary. But anyway, anyway, whatever the tradition was at that time is if the parents can't prove she's a virgin girl and she slept around and lied, the main key is lying, that she was a virgin when she got married and made it seem like she was a virgin, then you take her out and you stone her with stones. Because they prize the virgin girl more than anything. Here's a guy had his hopes way up, and here she was defiled the whole time. You know, it's a capital offense. It's pretty harsh, but that's what it says. And so now when it comes to, like I said, the eunuch, like if you were to castrate a guy, they could still get aroused, you know. But yeah, they can't produce kids. But for her to say, is Jesus promoting, you know, a bigender, like this third gender or whatever she uses? I'm like, come on, bro.
So Jesus is affirming essentially a third gender?
Is, he's not talking about, you know, the kingdom of God or whatever wording she says. You know, I'll put it right here. You can hear it yourself. He's talking about getting busy. And she hackles. I'm like, really? You really went there?
And there are people to this day who will say, see, he's affirming celibacy and this lack of sex. I'm like, actually, he's affirming having a good time, which is fascinating.
I said, I don't know what the Gentiles did in their multi-orgies and things like that. You know, you are not allowed to have a boy toy, which she is almost promoting in this video. So it's so wrong, and Derek calls her bluff. Do you have any resources on that? You know, for me, I don't know what I was said point blank in your face, and it's a friend, but you know, he's calling BS. But basically, what he did, can you give a resource? Blah blah blah. You know, and I'm glad he said that. You know, but dang, dude, it's like talk about like, I don't know if it's the liberal American agenda or what, you know, and she just cackles like, yay, yippee for sex. And I don't know if she's that way or not, but it seems to be, you know, shooting off onto that level, you know. And it's like, look, it says her right there, what he just says, you know, for the kingdom, you know, which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Hello? That's what the early church did then. You know, if they castrated themselves. And you can look at it online anywhere, you know, can, you know, a castrated man still become hard or erected? The answer is yes, but it's not as frequent anymore because of testosterone. That, you know, the testicles produce so much testosterone. There's another body part that produces testosterone too. That might start to build up more once the testicles are gone, but that knocks out quite a bit of drive, okay? Not 100%, but a lot of it, okay? And that was the point. Knock it out of the way. And so for the kingdom of God, okay? And, you know, when it came to harems, for example, yeah, they you know, a king, you know, might have a slave or something, cut off his testicles, so you don't have to worry about, you know, the harem being defiled, you know, as far as getting pregnant, but also the desire will be less. It'll be far less than a regular dude, okay? When you have control, but you're kind of over the harem per se. You get what I'm saying? And so, I mean, she's just way off the cuff, and I was like, whatever, man. And so let's finish reading, because I think I'm done here. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Yeah, okay, that's it. Again, I'll read it again. All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given, for there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. That's something they can't control. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. And that was probably like for kings and things like that. And slaves, like when, like say, Sennacherib came and took the people of partial of Judah and partial of Israel. And who knows? He could have made some eunuchs, or some other captive man, eunuchs, make him part of his guard, and because he was a good warrior or something, but he didn't want to have him sidetracked with women, or at least not heavily sidetracked, because the testosterone is now super low. You know what I'm saying? Not like bi. And there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So yeah, the New Testament writing this has things messed up with fornication versus sexual, whatever I just said, marital unfaithfulness, and so instead of fornication, it should be marital unfaithfulness. And yes, you could divorce your wife for real reasons. And yes, Jesus was correct. If you divorce a woman for not legitimate reasons, you are still married in the eyes of the kingdom of heaven. Okay? And so if someone is legitimately still married in God's eyes and you marry her, you commit adultery. See what I'm saying? So there's a bunch of screw-ups right there. So this lady needs to study a little bit more. All right. This is my spit for today, and I appreciate you watching. Again, it's Tuesday, April 26, 2022, and please like this channel or this video. Hit the subscribe button and notifications to help this channel out, and appreciate you watching.